On the night of 13 December 2020, the estranged wife of a Namibian diplomat reportedly knocked on the door of her neighbor insisting that she needs immediate help as the father of her 2 children was trying to harm his family. The series of events that followed set off what would become a diplomatic scandal and nightmare for Namibia. This crime story starts in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa is a city shaped by diplomacy and is referred to as Africa's political capital as it hosts continental and global institutions such as the African Union and a number of United Nations institutions, thereby paving the way for diplomatic relations. In late 2020, in one of Addis Ababa's plush residential areas was the family home of Petrus Haufiku, a commercial attaché at the Namibian embassy in Ethiopia. His estranged wife, 33-year-old Kristofina Amutenya, and their 2 children, 9-year-old Jane Haufiku and 3-year-old Jane Haufiku. Petrus's 11-year-old son from a previous relationship was also living with them at the time. Although the couple had been married and living together since 2010, in early November 2020, their divorce was finalized after Petrus filed at the Windhoek High Court. In his filing, he accused his wife of having an extramarital relationship and unlawfully and maliciously deserting him. Petrus was also granted custody of their 2 children, subject to Kristofina having reasonable access to them. When the police arrived at the couple's home on the night in question in mid-December, what they found shocked them. It is reported that inside one of the bedrooms were the lifeless bodies of Janae and Jane, who had been suffocated, while Kristofina's stepson was barely alive after he had been assaulted. Believing Petrus to be the culprit behind the double murder and attempted murder of the 3 children, the police allegedly detained him. However, when Petrus's 11-year-old son regained consciousness back in the hospital where he was being treated for his injuries, the young boy would go on to reveal that it was his stepmother, not his father, who had attempted to end his life. When Kristofina learned that the police had turned their attention to her, she reportedly locked herself in one of their upstairs bedrooms and tried to evade arrest by climbing through the window of their double-story house. Instead, she fell to the ground and had to be hospitalized for her injuries before she was taken into police custody. Kristofina made her first court appearance in Addis Ababa on 14 December 2020 without being formally charged and without legal representation. Even more strange was the fact that the matter was postponed for 2 months with no specific court date provided, and Kristofina was remanded in custody pending further investigations. This otherwise straightforward case of double murder and attempted murder had many other twists and turns. For starters, even though Petrus and Kristofina had divorced a month prior to the alleged crimes in their home, she was in Ethiopia as a diplomatic spouse and therefore enjoyed diplomatic immunity. Diplomatic immunity is a principle of international law by which foreign government officials and their spouses are protected against prosecution in the receiving state, in this case Ethiopia, for the entire period in which they hold their diplomatic posts. Secondly, because the crime was committed at their home, which is considered a diplomatic premises, it is a Namibian territory. In other words, the crime might as well have been committed on Namibian soil. For Kristofina to be prosecuted in Ethiopia, the Namibian government would have had to waive their diplomatic immunity. However, because Ethiopia's constitution and criminal code allow the death penalty for serious offenses, while no law in Namibia may prescribe death as a competent sentence, the Namibian government did not grant the waive as requested by Ethiopia. Finally, to further exacerbate the situation, Ethiopia and Namibia do not have an extradition agreement to allow Kristofina to be returned to Namibia in order to stand trial. Instead, Namibia reportedly asked Ethiopia to detain Kristofina for her own safety, without being formally charged while Namibia makes necessary arrangements to repatriate the suspect. On 5 April 2021, Kristofina landed at the Hosea Kutako International Airport accompanied by Ethiopian police officers. She was arrested upon arrival and detained at the Klein Windhoek police station for 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. However, 2 days later, on 7 April 2021, Kristofina was released from prison after all charges were provisionally withdrawn at the Windhoek Magistrates Court, pending the outcome of an urgent application filed in the Windhoek High Court. Kristofina's lawyer, Kadila Amomo, had brought the urgent application to the High Court to have the arrest, as well as all charges against her, declared null and void. Kadila's argument was that Namibian law enforcement agencies never applied for Kristofina's extradition back to Namibia in order for her to stand trial for the crimes of murder and attempted murder. Therefore, he argued, her arrest and continued detention was unlawful. The urgent application was withdrawn on 8 April 2021 after Kristofina's legal team and the Office of the Prosecutor General reached an agreement not to continue with the matter following Kristofina's release from custody.
It's a very complicated issue. Nevertheless, I can share the information that I could share related. Yes, as the ministry or the government through the Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation had earlier on informed the public about the unfortunate incident that happened in Ethiopia in one of our diplomatic premises, where the accused is alleged, I'm now using the words which have been used, having committed a double murder and attempted murder. Now, the property, of course, it was a rented property. However, it was occupied by a diplomat. Hence, it is a diplomatic premises, and by understanding of diplomatic norm, it's a Namibian territory. Also, as a normal practice, you could be asked to waiver the diplomatic status. But I have to inform you that when we have to, we fully understand the extent for the case in point, in requesting or in waivering diplomatic status, there are many factors that we look at. But I will mention two. One, whether in the country where the diplomatic facility is, you have an extradition treaty with that particular country. Second, you have also to see whether there are serious constitutional issues in as far as the national constitution is concerned when it comes to such incidents. For example, is there death penalty in that particular country? Now, depends now how you find it. You might decide not to ask to waiver diplomatic immunity so that you could only ask the person to be held in safe custody while you work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or International Relations in that particular country, so that the person can be handled within the laws of Namibia, in which territory the incident has taken place. And that is really the situation where we are. All the arrangements were made. MIRCO's responsibility is to make those consultations, working with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the receiving state, and a Namibian was finally under the escort of the receiving state police arrived in our country, and all the statements were handed over to the Namibian police, who have then taken charge of the person at the airport. But finally, we were informed as the ministry that the charges are withdrawn, and that's where I leave the case when I say it's complicated. So let the Namibian laws now take its course, which the Ministry of International Relations is not really much convinced on that, but we have done our part in bringing the Namibian home, who unfortunately find herself in that situation. So I thought I could share this, Honorable Speaker, with members and maybe by the nation at large.
Although it has been exactly 1.5 years since Kristofina's release, there has not been any new developments in the case. For those that continue to feel the loss of the two young lives, their graves at the Efikilo Cemetery in the Onankali area might be the only place to fill the void in the absence of justice being served on their killer.